Hi, I'm art critic Laura Robertson,
And I'm Max Gorbatskyi, new curator at Open Eye Gallery.
and this is Meet the Curator. Hello everyone, welcome to Meet the Curator with Max Gorbatskyi. My name is Laura Robertson, and I'd like to welcome Max to the Open Eye Gallery, where he's just started as the curator. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Laura. Thank you.
How are you feeling?
Very excited, honored to be here. It means a lot because I have a long history with Open Eye, so it's a very special moment for me coming back to the gallery in the role of curator.
Well, we'll get to that. Also, I wanted to say congratulations because you've just been announced as curator of the Ukrainian Pavilion for Venice Biennale 2024.
Really came as a surprise, I'll be honest. Also, huge responsibility, great honor, especially now, in a very, very difficult time for my country. Represented at such a high stage will be very, very important thing for me, and I feel huge responsibility about it.
It's a huge platform, obviously. We're really looking forward to hearing more about that. And you'll be curating with your partner, Victoria Bavakina. Have you got any plans yet? Are we allowed to know any secrets?
We haven't yet announced what we'll offer at the pavilion, but we kind of have general idea. We know the artist. It's actually a very horizontal project, so it's not that we just came up with the idea. It's already more or less formulated concept of the exhibition. We work with 5 artists. It's all built around the shared action. It's all built and horizontally structured, so we work with different people, communities who co-author the work.
So by horizontal, you mean everybody's kind of on the same level? Is that what you mean?
We work together. We, of course, we are 2 curators, but we try to act more as facilitators, someone who just makes it all happen. We, of course, choose the direction of it all, but we will work together with people and artists.
Okay.
Just because it's now probably, in our view, the most appropriate way of approaching art in Ukraine, because we are all living in one shared experience, and even the survival of Ukraine as a state is now due to people being together, working together on many occasions.
It's obviously a lot to think about. I like this idea of a people first idea and approach for the pavilion, and it'd be really interesting how you use the space with that approach and how you reach so many new audiences who are yet to still learn about Ukrainian art, of course, but also recent history, what's happening at the moment, and what Ukrainian people are concerned about, because that's what it's a platform that you can really discuss these things within.
Yeah, it's
right?
true. It's true. I think this is very political stage for. Of course, it's about art, but now it's always been, but now especially, it's a place to maybe project some ideas, think about the ways we want Ukraine to be perceived, even. But of course, we want to highlight great artists of contemporary Ukraine. So it's too many things.
You want to do both. You want to do a lot of things.
Do everything together.
Well, I was going to ask you just these recent kind of career changes, how it's made you think about your own curatorial ideas, and you've answered that somewhat. Are you seeing art and photography in a different way over the past, obviously, the past couple of years has been incredibly difficult for Ukraine and has had a huge impact on its people and artists, but just generally moving to Liverpool, also to take on this new curatorial post, and with Venice on the horizon. Do you feel like your curatorial approaches or ideas are changing or have changed?
I think they are changing, and they definitely have changed because we moved to UK 6 months before the full-scale invasion, but still, after it happened, everything changed. And I think it is very subjective, personal points of view, but I think most of the people who work in art sector in Ukraine, they start to perceive things a bit differently because maybe questioning sometimes what can actually art and culture do, like now, in this situation, for the country, for each other, of course, because I think working with art can take different forms. So I think it can be like an action, it can be even a therapy, it can be creating a record, creating artistic kind of record, yeah. So it definitely changed. But now, as I am in this position of maybe not talking on behalf of Ukraine, but still representing Ukraine together with Victoria at Venice Biennale, we of course thinking about how we can use this opportunity in the best possible way, not only talking about art, but talking about broader socio-political context.
Yeah. And like some of the best art does that, doesn't it? Engaging with life and politics and ideas, of course. But it's really hard. It's a lot of pressure to put on art as well as like this kind of purposeful, functional thing. The theme of the Biennale next year, what is the theme?
It's foreigners everywhere. Yeah.
So it's already engaging with migration.
Yeah. It has been announced after actually we submitted the initial application, but I think it's a spirit which is somewhere just here. So I think we just sensed the work we're creating now has to deal with these questions. And even if we haven't been forced to move Ukraine as many people were, we still, of course, we have this experience of being foreigners, but now it takes some totally different, maybe emphasized idea what foreigner is. So we built our project also around the questions of migration movement. Before we worked on very broad idea of home here with Open Eye Gallery in Liverpool. So it's just coincided,
And this was the recent exhibition Home, which was across 40 venues in Liverpool, in the Liverpool City region, right? A lot of different venues.
I don't think
many artists.
Know the precise number, to be honest, but there were many.
It was a big exhibition. And it beautifully engaged with photography and poetry. So Ukrainian imagery with British words, that was the premise of the show, wasn't it? So this is the recent big exhibition you've just worked on in Liverpool. So kind of like getting you into the city, introducing you to kind of the challenges here through Open Eye, what you were working with, also introducing audiences to Ukrainian photography for the first time because it was the biggest presentation, wasn't it, of Ukrainian photography in the UK, so far. And what struck me about that show is how good poetry was as an interpretation tool for photography. Poetry and photography
Maybe not even interpretation, right? It was just working on adding totally new levels sometimes because it wasn't descriptive, it wasn't purely just didn't have an aim to reflect the image, right? It was a consideration maybe of the image and this possible stories behind the image even sometimes.
Yeah, that's right.
I think it really worked beautifully. I hope
it did.
Audiences in Liverpool think the same.
It really opened up doors and ideas and stories. Obviously, some of the stories on the show were very moving. They were obviously from the front line, they were from people's apartments, they were also incredibly abstract. You had some science fiction work in there and very strange work that was about colour and intensity and other sensations. So I thought the poetry worked really well to kind of draw us in a different way. So it did work. It worked for me.
Of course, we are very grateful to boards who responded to this and who actually contributed their time, ideas, who produced some beautiful poems.
What was that experience for you like, curating home?
It's hard to express in one sentence because it's been quite an extensive program, but working with OpenEye, so we worked as curators with OpenEye, me and Victoria. It was great because the team is great, so we actually received help on any possible occasion. So even if the project was so big and involving, so there were 5 exhibitions across the city region, big exhibition at OpenEye, public realm work, of course the book and the film, but all the people we worked with were so involved and amazing and great, so it was a really, really great experience, and understanding that there is an audience, international audience coming to Liverpool for the Eurovision, and maybe they will not go, they didn't want to go to the gallery specifically, but OpenEye is located in a really great place in Liverpool, so we realized how important and great it is, so we can actually create something for people to engage with Ukrainian culture and photography.
So just to explain, we're in the gallery at the moment, upstairs at OpenEye Gallery, and situated just on the dock by the River Mersey. So this was kind of like the heart of Eurovision celebrations, and then lots of live music, as well as seeing all this huge photography and poetry blown up on a big scale everywhere, right? So yeah, it was quite an exciting time to start here. But it's not your first time in Liverpool though, is it? It's not even your first time living in Liverpool?
Yeah, this is true. I came to Liverpool first time in 2017, in the times when Erasmus was still possible between the British and
R.I.P.
universities.
Erasmus.
Yeah, so I studied at the University of Bologna, and I came to OpenEye to do internship.
So what were you studying in Italy?
I was studying arts management.
Yes, MA Arts Management.
Yeah.
Decided to do Erasmus, and I thought out of all the places you could have done it, you chose Liverpool.
Yeah, I actually can't tell you why, but I just had a sense that it should be a right place. But of course, just because I researched what OpenEye did, so I knew the previous program. I knew about Liverpool as a city not only because of Beatles or football clubs.
That's my next question. Was it because of the Beatles? So glad it wasn't just because of that.
I think Liverpool is quite a well-known city in the world because of all the history, of the industrial history, of the history of being a major port. So really attracted me to come here.
So what happened when you stayed in Liverpool? You became an intern essentially at OpenEye Gallery.
Yeah.
And what did you take away from that experience?
A lot, because the approach OpenEye takes on how can we work with photography to be meaningful for the communities we work with, meaningful for audiences and for the artists. It was quite a formative experience, I would say.
Yeah.
That's why I had this interest and connection with OpenEye through the years, and that's why I was so interested in applying to this job and actually coming back to OpenEye to work here again.
So tell me a little bit more about your background, Max. Ukrainian born. You actually started as a photojournalist, which is super interesting given your role now at OpenEye. Tell me more about what you learned in that field and kind of growing up in Ukraine and kind of going into photojournalism as a field. What was that like?
I think I had a very romanticized image of photography when I started to do photography. My father
Right.
was a photographer. I had this, I don't know how many cameras in the house. And of course, I only knew some bits about history of photography. I think I was attracted to this image of photographer who travels the world and
Yeah.
like, National Geographic kind of approach. So I started to work at local media outlets in my hometown. I found it really interesting at the time, but then I started maybe a little bit to question this idea of how images work, and of course questioning the idea of what a photograph can do, how transparent it is as a medium, how does it inform, or does it actually confuses you, or how does information work in general and visual information. So I think working in photojournalism made me question more things about photography.
So did you feel comfortable with it as a medium in terms of like its ability to tell a story?
I do. I also think that it's hard to talk about photography as a whole because you can I think definition in the dictionary, if you look it up, it will be something like it's an art and a practice of doing photographs or something. So which is quite a vague definition. So talking about photography as a technical medium, it's one conversation. If you talk about photography as art, it's totally different. So this is probably what attracts me the most to photography, because it actually can operate within the realm of art or beyond it. It can be used as a technical means, it can be used for surveillance, but also as a self-expression. So many applications makes it unique medium. So I'm comfortable to work with it because it's countless options of approaching it.
You've kind of gone full spectrum with photography, engaging it as a subject matter, haven't you? In itself and as a theory, from photojournalist. You won the Sony Photography Award when you were quite young, still in that practice. You've studied photography, you're studying MA, History of Photography now at Birkbeck University. And you're also a curator of photography in a gallery that engages with photography across the whole spectrum. So fine art, very experimental photography, to journalism, to kind of reportage and all sorts of things. How do you feel like, what's relevant about photography, do you think? At the moment? Yeah, like what can photography do? What do you look for it to do or to be or to feel like, or not? Like, have you got any kind of
such a fundamental
expectations
question?
I suppose. What are your expectations of photography?
I think what beautiful is about photography that every 10 years you can say photography changed so much over the last 10 years, and it's always true. So maybe this debate about analog and digital passed, from my perception. Now it's AI problematics being discussed. So it's always something new comes into the discourse. But it's really hard to talk about photography as a whole. Sometimes it's also hard to talk about photographs as separate entities, because this is a really different subject matter, right?
Yeah.
I think what, for example, OpenEye does, and why I wanted to work with OpenEye, is because it really puts the people who work with photography in the first place, which makes total sense. But at the same time, I really enjoy the work of artists who meditate on the things inside the medium. So these both approaches are equally interesting to me. But I think contemporary photography, if we can talk about it in such a general terms, to my view, has to work with also the audiences, the people involved, and with exploiting the unique possibilities medium provides. It's a very broad, maybe, answer to your question, but it's really what I think.
This is the opportunity to tackle it, isn't it? You're at a small city gallery right now dedicated to photography with the kind of international festival platform also on the horizon. So it's a really interesting time for you.
This is true. I really need to learn many things, because I totally understand how important it is to understand the local context, to understand the audiences and communities, especially here at OpenEye, where it's not only the white cube for people loving art, it's actually a place to engage.
Yeah. But it's also been specialist in socially engaged photography. And what does that term mean to you?
But I was saying that I think when you put the people in the first place. So, as a photography gallery, the photography as a medium, of course, is very important. Everything we do has to have photography at the center, but also it's maybe two centers, so people and photography. I will think of how can we balance this. It's already well balanced, but I'm thinking of maybe new approaches to work with it.
What would you really like to do here?
I think OpenEye maybe deserves more international visibility, because some practices developed here over the last years, they are really innovative. They are really the practices other photography practitioners can learn from. So I think it will be one of my goals to try and maybe bring more international contexts and make OpenEye more visible for international photography community, so they would like to engage with it more. So I think of it is essential to talk about local histories, local people, but it's also important maybe to bring people from outside to try and work with local context. I come from outside of this context. It definitely takes time to learn. So of course, if you try and bring international established artists somewhere to work in the local context, you might end up having pretty shallow projects because there's not enough time to actually understand what you're working with. But still, I'm thinking in this direction.
So what's that like studying Marxism after growing up in a post-Soviet space? You grew up in Ukraine in the 90s. Were you a teenager in the 1990s? You're 35 now, aren't you?
36, yeah.
36,
I was born in 1987, so it was still Soviet Union.
Yeah.
It's actually a really interesting thing to talk about the post-Soviet as a concept, right? Because talking about the 90s, of course, it is a post-Soviet time, so there were certain things, majority of things, still continuing from the Soviet times. But I think now Ukraine is absolutely not a post-Soviet country, because ideologically, conceptually, what people think, how they perceive themselves, it doesn't really have such a pronounced connections with Soviet past. So I think this concept is actually fading out, which I'm really happy about. But yeah, studying at Birkbeck, studying history of photography through the Marxism theory and framework, it's a great experience because I grew up in a very anti-communist family and slightly anti-Marxist family, because of course we, as many people, we had very difficult experience of Soviet Union. I know that many people missed Soviet Union when it collapsed. Now many people think there were great things, and people managed to be happy, to live, enjoy their lives. But I think it was really, to my view, very ugly, strange, oppressive state, which actually affected the mindsets of many generations. So,
and including your parents, obviously, because they worked in quite technical jobs, didn't they? And then had to change.
Engineers as a very popular occupation in the Soviet Union, yeah. So of course they need to change after it collapsed, because it was a planned economy, as it was called. So everything just shifted.
Yeah. And then what did it look like as well for you as a child? Because you mentioned before, your dad was also a photographer. There were cameras all around the house, but also there's this huge shift with your parents having to find new careers and new ways of income, right, when you were still a child.
I think my parents, they were so good at making my life comfortable, so I didn't really feel the stress of it. I imagined how stressful this time was for them, but somehow they managed to find new ways to work, to live. Yeah, so it was I know that 90s for many people were just absolutely terrible time. For me, it was a happy childhood time, thanks to my parents. But now studying Marxist ideas is, of course, interesting, and it's just a huge problem that many people have who grew up after Soviet Union or grew up in Soviet Union. So we have such a bad attitude to maybe these ideas, and it takes time for you to actually work with them, to study them. When you growing older, maybe when you start to engage with literature.
Well, you called it before communist trauma, right?
Yeah,
and there's kind of like this generational effect and impact on your way of thinking, and also photography is being
different in art, of course, because majority of artists, as in any country, they have leftist kind of views, which is the same in Ukraine. But for majority of people, I think, who do not spend much time thinking about the fundamental ideas and comparing capitalism ideas, Marx ideas, they have a negative attitude to Marxism because it equals communism, because it equals Soviet Union.
And photojournalism, do you think that is going to be part of your kind of open eye curatorial programming in the future? Do you think there'll be any engagement with, these kind of past experiences, the politics, the theory that you're interested in at the moment? Where is that fitting into open eye, and how are you kind of seeing your future programming here?
Yeah. I'm not sure, honestly, that photojournalism is the best avenue to approach photography at the moment, because there are many photographers who work with, let's call it, documentary genre, but who also use the approaches of contemporary art, who work with the archives maybe to raise some questions from the past which are relevant now. So, and it's very questionable how objective or how informative the journalist projects can be. They can be, of course, but I don't see it as a main approach I would take as a curator.
Is objectivity important, or actually subjectivity? Because flipping between contemporary art and photojournalism, like those words are really important, aren't they? And like completely different approaches and versions of history and experiences.
But I think when the project actually raises the question is an awareness of how untransparent photography can be. So you're not left with let's not even have this illusion of photography just telling us the story. We, of course, need to understand how it operates. But it's often not about the narrative. It's not about the importance of the narrative. Maybe sometimes less the importance of the process of creation photographs, which here at OpenEye is very well developed over the last years.
Would you like to see more process-led
Definitely.
programming here? So the making, the enjoyment of making photography, the techniques and materials and processes, and just experience of that, rather than the final kind of output
I think
or object.
both are important, but of course, process is very important, and OpenEye is a very, also I would say, from my experience, very horizontal structure. It's a teamwork, really. So it's a teamwork which involves co-creation of work also with photographers and communities. So this is a really different take on photography. Sometimes you can have a beautifully done photograph for a project, but not necessarily has to be at the center of what you're doing. So yeah, I'm not sure that seeking for objectivity and particular stories, this is the most important thing.
Do you think, I mean, can you tell us what you'd like to do here? Have you got any favourite photographers or genres that you'd really like to see in the gallery here under your watch?
I have some photographers who undoubtedly influenced my tastes and my interest in photography. So, of course, I still admire work of people from Düsseldorf like Thomas Struth or Thomas Roof or Beckers. They were all really important for me. I absolutely admire work of Wolfgang Tillmans because he just like an epitome of how artists can work with photography in totally different ways, in different times, the activist position, purely artistic position. But there are so many great photographers now. If you look for magazine, if you open for magazine, you always find some new name which you never heard of about. Or photographers not maybe from the major traditions, not from States or Germany or Europe.
Well, geographic, yeah, exactly. Are we going to be seeing more kind of introductions to work from Eastern Europe? Like, are there places that you would like OpenEye audiences to kind of become more familiar with?
Definitely, because I'm Ukrainian. I maybe have a good understanding of Eastern European cultural context. And of course, I will try to bring more Ukrainian, Eastern European photography into OpenEye, but I will also be very careful with developing the previous practices. So Mariama, she had a strong connections with Africa, and so previous exhibitions or programs, and I will definitely try and develop it further. So maybe we will try and talk about relevant problems, but involving people from different regions, so we can actually build on the previous program of OpenEye, trying maybe to add my expertise into new projects. And of course, it's also the contribution of OpenEye team, because everyone has really different expertise in different fields. So now we'll be working on Climate Lab, which was already programmed before, so I'm joining the process of making it, and everyone
Climate Lab,
contributing.
just for people who don't know, that's the project that you're running with University of Salford, right?
I think so.
And Mishka Henne is a resident artist in a climate house.
Yeah, the energy house. Yeah.
Energy house, which is kind of engaging with, in a physical way, in an actual house, engaging with how we
science and
live,
art,
right?
And OpenEye has so many partnerships, so sometimes I'm not very sure about that.
For a tiny art gallery, and a specialist one, you work with so many people. And you mentioned archive before as well. I know that's something you're interested in. It's such a fantastic archive at OpenEye Gallery, dating back from the 1970s.
Archives can be a great place to ask questions about not only past, but about the present. And OpenEye archive is a very unique thing, and we will work on trying to maybe make it more. So we can try and bring more people to work with it, people from outside the photography sector, just researchers, students. So we'll try and maybe digitize it and make it more open, because we will of course need funds to do all these great things, but we will really try to make an archive much more open and invite people to work with it.